everyone, and welcome to ABC Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Kiki.
And today we are beginning a 3-day wonderful story about the little princess and the poet.
That's right.
I'm imagining this is a fairy tale of some kind because we have a princess in the fairy tale, and there are many princesses in fairy tales, and of course in Disney movies. Everyone has a favorite princess from a story. Do you have a favorite princess that when you were little, you thought she was so pretty or cool or awesome, and you know, she was a bit of a hero or a heroine of yours?
I think one of my Disney princesses has to be Mulan.
Oh, she was pretty good, especially in that first movie, the cartoon.
Right.
I thought she was cool, and she had that great dragon
as
a friend. Is she a Disney princess? But she's similar to yours, just from another part of the world. Brave.
Oh.
I liked her red hair.
Merida.
Merida,
yeah.
I think. And I liked the fact that she could use a bow and arrow.
Right, that was really cool.
Actually, a Merida Mulan battle. That'd be pretty cool.
No, I think they will work together.
Well, then they could battle just for fun, as, you know, training. Or maybe they could both team up and fight against the poet. That wouldn't be nice, though. No, the poet's probably a kind person who's writing poems. So we have a story about a princess and a writer of poems. I don't think I've ever heard this story. Have you?
No, I haven't.
No, it's a new one for me, a new one for Kiki, and hopefully a new one for you guys out there. And it's going to be 3 days, so this will be a fun and interesting story, and maybe even a little bit exciting. Let's hope so! The Little Princess and the Poet. Here we go.
There once was a poor, ugly poet. He went from place to place and told people his poems. Nobody listened to him, though.
Okay, so you guys can see the title, The Little Princess and the Poet. Now, when we say the princess is little, we don't probably mean she's like this big and she can fit in your pocket. We probably mean that she's young.
Right.
She's a girl, you know, that kind of thing. And we know it's a she because it's a princess. And a princess, it would be the daughter of a king or a queen. So if in the future you will grow up to be a queen or to marry a king, then there's a good chance that you are, as a child, a princess. And of course, a boy would be a prince. So the princess will probably live in a castle. She'll probably be very beautiful. And yes, her parents will be either kings or queens or both. And we also had another person in the title, a poet.
That's right. Yeah. And usually in fairy tales, we would think of princesses, they'll go with a prince.
Often, yes.
A poet?
That's right. Poets can be in many stories, but not often in fairy tales.
Right. So what is a poet? Who is a poet? A poet is a person who writes poetry or poems. They are creative writers, and they share their emotions and their thoughts into words.
Yeah, it's like they're drawing pictures or painting pictures using words.
That's right.
It's a very special skill to be a poet. So let's find out all about these two characters in our story.
All right, let's begin. There once was a poor, ugly poet.
Oh. Okay.
He went from place to place and told people his poems. So he was a traveling poet. He'll go to different places and share his stories or his poems to people.
Okay, so this is, of course, long before movies, television, even books were probably rare there. So they had storytellers, poets, singers, and musicians. They would travel from town to town entertaining people. And we learned there that along with being very skilled at words and writing poems, this poet was also ugly. which isn't too bad if you're a poet. You're a writer. I mean, if you're an ugly actor, that might be a bit more of a problem because ugly just means not nice to look at. Generally, for people, this would be the opposite of handsome or beautiful. A handsome or beautiful person could be a model or a movie star or something like that. An ugly person, maybe not quite so famous for being good-looking because they're not very good-looking. They're kind of unpleasant to look at. But that should not be any barrier to success, especially if you're writing poems.
Right, and I think even if the poet is ugly, I'm pretty sure his poems are beautiful.
Maybe an ugly face, but a beautiful heart.
That's right.
Oh, I like that.
So we mentioned that a poet will write poetry or a poem. So a poem is a piece of writing where the words are chosen for the images and the ideas that give suggestions to the reader's imagination. So sometimes the sounds of the words, when read out loud, they'll often follow a particular rhythmic pattern or a rhyme. So I have a little poem, a short poem.
Okay.
Okay, so here it goes. The sun and the moon, two sides of the same coin. Their light and their shadows forever join. The sun, bright and bold, a symbol of life. The moon, soft and serene, a comfort in the night.
Wow, that's really nice. So those are words about the sun and moon, but in a way to kind of make us think and feel things rather than just saying what they are up there in the sky. And you had coin and join, also two words that sound similar or they rhyme.
That's right.
I think you could be a poet too. Look at that. All right, let's get back to our story before we reach the break.
All right, so we know that he went from town to town to share his poem.
Yes.
And the poet was ugly. Okay?
That's right.
So, going back to our story, nobody listened to him though.
Oh no. Why? Was it because his poems weren't good or just because his face wasn't handsome? I don't understand. So we're going to have to clearly read more of this story, and we will do that after our break.
One day, the poet was in a new city. As usual, nobody listened to him, but they told him to go to the palace. The little princess was blind and enjoyed listening to poems. So, the poet went there. The soldiers turned him away because he was too ugly to be a poet. However, the princess heard the poet's voice and invited him into the palace.
All right, we are back with our story, The Princess and the Poet. We have met the poet, this man who writes poems. We don't know if his poems are really good or not, but we do know he's kind of ugly. He's not a handsome poet, and maybe for that reason, or maybe for some other reason, when he travels around to read his poems to people, they don't really listen to him. They don't really pay attention. They don't seem interested. But that doesn't stop him, and he continues to journey through the land telling or reading his poems. So let's get back and find out what's going on now. It says, one day the poet was in a new city. So he has to go from place to place, finding new people to entertain. Every few days, he probably travels to a new town or city, and he's in one now. As usual, it says nobody listened to him. So I can imagine him maybe standing on the corner in a crowded market or in an area with restaurants and taverns at night, trying to read his poems, entertain people, get them to listen. But no one was listening to him. As usual, nobody listened to him, but they told him to go to the palace. Interesting. Now, maybe they're trying to get him in trouble or something, or maybe they're kind of saying, well, we don't really like poems. We'd rather watch knights fighting or bear baiting contests. But people up at the palace, those fancy rich people, they love poems. You should go up there. But either way, the palace would be one of the biggest, most important buildings in the city.
That's right. I could imagine, like you mentioned, Mike, standing there in the market, alone up there, you know, reading his poems and people just walking by. I can imagine that feeling kind of bad.
That would hurt. Absolutely. You're doing your best work, but no one seems to care.
So now we know people have suggested that he should go to the palace. And we don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So the palace is a large house that is the official home of a king, queen, or other people that are of high social ranking.
Important people.
Okay, very important people. They'll live in these big houses. And the reason why this house is official is because this is, you know, people will know that this is their house. Sometimes it's owned by the government, depending on which royal family it is. So it is official. Everyone sees the palace. They know this belongs to the royal family. Okay? So they've told the poet, go to the palace and share your poems there.
Yeah.
Okay? Now let's find out who is waiting at the palace.
Right. Why did they suggest going to the palace?
Right. The little princess was blind and enjoyed listening to poems.
Interesting. So this sounds like a good thing for the poet, I guess. The people were saying, go to the palace because there lives the princess. Remember, the daughter of the king and or queen. So the princess who lives there is described as being blind. That means she can't see. Her eyes don't work. So people or animals, I guess, we could describe a blind cat or dog. And of course, people, if their eyes don't work because they were just born that way or they had an accident or a disease later and they can't see, basically their eyes don't work. So of course, we treat them in special ways and give them special things to help them. And I guess this means that poems and songs are really good for the princess. She clearly can't read books or things like that. So the poet took the people's advice and went to the palace. So the poet went there. The soldiers turned him away because he was too ugly to be a poet. So even the soldiers at the palace were being mean to the poet. They didn't care about his words, his poems. They just looked at his face and said, no, you're too ugly to come in to talk to the princess, even though she's blind. She doesn't care.
She only cares about the poetry.
Exactly.
However, the princess heard the poet's voice and invited him into the palace.
Wow, so maybe a window was opening while he was talking to the soldiers, the guards, and the poet has a beautiful speaking voice. And so the princess said, I want to meet him. This looks like it could be good for the poet, but we have 2 more days of this story. I hope nothing bad happens, but we'll have to find out tomorrow. We'll see you back here for that. Take care, guys.
There once was a poor, ugly poet. He went from place to place and told people his poems. Nobody listened to him, though. One day, the poet was in a new city. As usual, nobody listened to him, but they told him to go to the palace. The little princess was blind and enjoyed listening to poems. So, the poet went there. The soldiers turned him away because he was too ugly to be a poet. However, the princess heard the poet's voice and invited him into the palace.
Hi, I'm Tina. 我们来看这一课的重点单字。第一个 princess 名词公主。The princess lived in a big castle. 那位公主住在一个大城堡里。下一个单字 ugly， 形容词丑陋的。He felt sad when his classmates called him ugly. 当同学们说他长得丑时，他很难过。下一个单字 poem， 名词诗。Poet 就是诗人。It's a book of love poems. 这是一本爱情诗集。下一个单字 blind， 形容词失明的。Blindness 是名词失明。Joseph has been blind since birth. Joseph 天生失明。Birth 指的是出生。接着我们来看重点文法。第一个 from place to place， 各地四处。字面意思是从一个地方到一个地方，意思就是到各处。我们来看看这个例句。Raya traveled from place to place, exploring different countries and cultures. Raya 四处旅行，探索不同的国家和文化。Explore 指的是探索。下一个文法 as usual， 一如往常，这是一个副词片语。Usual 指的是通常的、惯常的。我们来看看这个例句。I got up at 7:30 as usual. 我和平常一样7点半起床。最后一个文法 turn somebody away， 不让某人进入，将某人拒于门外。我们来看看这个例句。The restaurant was fully booked, so they had to turn away customers without reservations. 这家餐厅客满了，所以他们不得不拒绝没有预定的顾客。Reservation 指的是预定。以上就是这一课的重点单字跟文法，我们下一课再见，拜拜。
Hey everybody, today we are going to be visiting the Ningxia Night Market. Being Taiwanese, you probably take night markets for granted. But did you know that in other countries, like where I'm from, we don't have night markets? I know. Can you believe that? Can you imagine living in a place where there are no night markets? Once you've been to a night market, oh man, you cannot go back. It's one of my favorite things about living in Taiwan, and so much delicious food, so much to do. Man, I think I'm gonna go to a night market tonight. But first, let's look at today's lesson. Ningxia Night Market is one of Taipei's oldest night markets. When you go to this night market, they have all kinds of incredible foods like oyster omelets, stinky tofu, chicken rice, and even taro egg yolk balls. Some of these foods have even made it onto the Michelin's Bib Gourmand list. Ningxia Night Market tries hard to keep clean and make sure to reduce waste. So they have plenty of places to recycle, and not only that, it is the first non-smoking night market in Taiwan. Most vendors have menus in different languages, so it's super convenient for foreign tourists to come and visit. So definitely visit Ningxia Night Market for a taste of Taiwanese flavor. This is really a great night market for foreign tourists. I know whenever I have my friends visiting me from the US, I always bring them there because a lot of the menus are in English and it's just very convenient for foreigners. So if you have any foreign friends, make sure you take them to the Ningxia Night Market. We'll see you next time.